Hi again. In my last video I got you drawing the view through your window, and it was quite useful because you'd got the window frame to actually frame the scene for you. This time a little bit more complicated. I'm wanting you to go into your garden or into the countryside, and I'm going to get you to do the scene in front of you. Now, it's a little bit more complicated because obviously you've got a lot of landscape, you've got the sky and you've got things in your peripheral vision. So you need to really focus your eyes on something that you're wanting to draw. This is why artists do this kind of thing with their fingers. They squint and then start looking through the landscape like that. And that's really quite useful. It's not very useful though if you're actually sitting down to draw something and you've got to keep doing that. So this is where these come in handy, viewfinders. These are all homemade, you don't need to go out and spend a lot of money. The back of a cornflake packet would do. For the purposes of landscape though, you don't really need something this big because they're a bit cumbersome. So I suggest what you need is a little bit of card. This is about 14 centimetres by, I don't know, about 10 centimetres, something like that. The important thing is the aperture, because that's got to correspond to whatever your drawing area is. So in this case, my sketch pads tend to be 1.5 times the length as to the width. So I must make sure that that aperture corresponds with that. Where it's also really useful, as you can see with that, that's useful but not as useful as dividing it into 9 rectangles. And you can do that either with string, like in this case. You can see that one's extremely well used, and I've just glued string to it. So you can do that, but an even quicker way is of just using elastic bands. And as you've seen, I've marked off where I want the elastic bands to go. And so if they get out of place, you can just push them back. So that's the simplest solution. If you're working on A4 size, it isn't 1 to 1.5, I think it's 1 to 1.4. But again, you do need to measure what you're drawing onto. Then I discovered something really, I think quite brilliant, because when I was out in the countryside and I'm doing this, you're forever doing that, and it's quite difficult. So I invented, well I haven't invented this obviously, I've used a telescopic a selfie stick, and I've just butchered it, taken the bit off the top and put a couple of just a couple of slits in that, and I've wedged my viewfinder in that, and that's really useful because I find often you're sitting on a rock or a stone, and you can just jam it into beside you and you can hold on to it, or you can, or even on your, like that, I've jam it between my legs, and I find it really useful. Whether you're using a selfie stick or whether you're using your arms, each time you have to align it back onto what you're looking for. So if you find scene and you look through that, pinpoint a little location point. So let's say I usually use this one here. If I put it down there, my cameraman will come in. I usually try and pinpoint something there, and it might just be I don't know, the edge of a house or something, or I try and find something. So every time I put it down, every time I go back up, I can relocate it onto that particular feature in the landscape. If you use that, obviously if you use it that way, and I've got a couple of examples here. This is one of St Andrew's Castle. You see, I leave the lines in, it doesn't bother me because it's just a sketch. But you can hold it that way, and you can see there's the rectangles, and that really helped me because I could see for a start in that rectangle nothing was happening, so good didn't have to do anything there. Obviously if you're holding it that way, then you're doing more landscape, and you've got all these shapes. It's really important that you look back to the last video number 7, if you haven't seen that, because in video number 7 I showed you how important it was to see landscape not as 3-dimensional form but 2-dimensional shape, and rather than repeat that here, I think you just need to go back and watch number 7. If your landscape, as in this one, has a tree, again I would whiz back to my 4th video where I told you what to look for in trees. As you can see, another tip I can give you is I've just at the front of my sketch pad, I've just glued an envelope and I just stick the viewfinder in there, and then I'm ready to go. So if you go out into the countryside, again, don't worry about tonal value. All we're interested in is shape, line and shape again. So if you go out with your sketch pad and your newly made viewfinder and have a go. Thank you very much.